Hello, hello, hello. This is Elder Batillo, Truth in Love Ministry, with another message out of my mind. Listen, this message is designed with you in mind, and I'm hoping that you will get something out of it that will help you grow and to help you know that you matter and you are someone who is valid in this world today. All right? It's something for you to think about as far as success and succeeding in your endeavors to do whatever you're trying to do. As long as it's right, as long as it's good, and as long as it doesn't buck against the will of God, I want you to have this information so that you can move forward and go higher in your life. Okay, I didn't say get higher, okay, but I said go higher in your life. So we've been talking about the four V's you need to succeed. There's probably more of them. There's probably more than four, but I'm only dealing with four. And those four, again, was vision, value, validation, and today I'm going to be talking about vulnerability. That's right, vulnerability, the ability to be vulnerable. Vulnerable. That's how you say it, vulnerable. I always say when I'm talking fast, it's vulnerable, but it's vulnerable. But anyway, I didn't come to teach an English class or to deal with pronunciation, but I want you to understand that this message will help you succeed in life. All right? So, once again, the word is vulnerable. You need to be vulnerable. Now, let's get us a working understanding of what this word is talking about. It says being vulnerable refers to a willingness to expose one's authentic emotions, thoughts, or experiences, often in a state of openness and without self protection. It involves embracing a sense of emotional honesty and transparency, which can lead to deeper self awareness, connection with others, and personal growth. I don't know about you, but I'm all about personal growth. I believe in personal growth. So, recap again, being vulnerable refers to a willingness. You are willing to expose one's authentic, real emotions. We all know how to play the game and hide behind a mask and put out some emotions or act like we are feeling a certain way and we are really feeling a different way. I was speaking at a church, or not speaking, but I was doing doing some singing, and when I presented, I talked about one song, and then I presented another song, and when I was talking about that, I was saying that people are looking good, and they are, uh, they look ready for church, but there's somebody that looks ready and they look good and they look excited and they look like, as I like to say sometimes in a playful way, but I'm so excited and delighted that I was invited to speak at this church or this function or what have you. But we look excited and delighted that we've been invited, but down on the inside there's a storm going on. There's a war going on. And so what we look like on our face is not what's going on down on the inside. But a lot of times, no one knows it because we have learned through life to put up a good front. We've learned to wear a mask and how to camouflage and put on a uniform to make us look like we are having a good time and life is beautiful and we don't have any problems, but in reality we got a war going on. And so a lot of times we want to be vulnerable, but some people are afraid. They're afraid that if they are vulnerable or if they open up or if they let people know their true emotions, that they're going to get hurt. and therefore they keep it all locked in. But see, what's in you is gonna come out, and if you lock it in too long, if you pack too much stuff in there, sooner or later it has to explode somehow. So it is good to share authentic emotions, okay? Authentic emotions. Share it with somebody. Tell somebody. Have a good friend or minister or something. Uh, 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 if you choose to have a therapist, but whatever you do, be authentic. In other words, be real and share your true emotions. So again, vulnerable refers to a willingness to expose one's authentic emotions. It is also the willingness to share one's thoughts, what you think about a thing. When you do go to counseling or when you do go to see a therapist, most of the time they're not doing the talking. Most of the time they're not teaching you and trying to train you in all those different things. What they do is they provide a way for you to talk, because you need to speak about what's on the inside, what you are thinking. Do you know that a person that is left to his own thoughts and never show or share their real thoughts, they can end up having mental problems? Because if you only have your own thoughts and you're not listening to anybody else and you're not sharing, let me put it this way. When you share your real thoughts, you can get real responses from someone else. You can get real authentic input from somewhere else, and it will help you to know if your thoughts are the right thoughts. Okay, you bounce your thoughts off different people. You bounce your thoughts off of your loved ones or different ones. You bounce your thoughts off of those people, therapists or what have you, counselors, ministers, what have you. You bounce your thoughts, you speak your thoughts, real thoughts, and then you get responses. You don't have to agree with the response that you get, but at least you have something to measure your thoughts by. But if you're sitting around and you never speak your real thoughts, and you think somebody knows what you're thinking and they can understand your actions and they know where you're coming from, no, they don't, because you don't share. And so when you need somebody, when you need support, when you need somebody to have your back, when you need somebody to be on your side, when you need somebody to lend a helping hand, they don't know who they're dealing with, because you have not been shared your authentic thoughts. You don't share what's happening with you. A lot of people, they don't want to deal with you because they don't know what's happening with you. You don't share anything real. You're cut off. You stand off. You're scared. You're hiding behind a mask. But you need to come out from behind that mask and at least talk to somebody and share your real thoughts, okay? Your authentic thoughts. Some of the things that you've been through. You need to be vulnerable enough to share some of the things that you have been through, okay? Some of your experiences, some of the things that have happened to you. Now, you don't go and, if it's negative stuff, you don't go around and blab it around to everybody. But there's got to be somebody that you can talk to and share your experiences. Somebody you can actually tell your secrets to. Because when we hold all of these things in, it affects us emotionally, and we can have an emotional overload. We can have an emotional, mental overload. And so we need to share. And so being vulnerable, it means you open up, okay? Often in a state of openness and without self-protection. You don't try to protect yourself. You share what you feel, what you think, and what you've been through, and you don't try to lie and go around certain things and try to hold back a little bit, because that's how you protect yourself. You think. You believe that you protect yourself by not giving the whole story. You protect yourself because you've done some things that you don't want anybody to know because you would be embarrassed. So you protect yourself from being embarrassed. You attempt to protect yourself from feeling bad about how somebody else may think about what you said. And so, therefore, having said that, you are closed off and no one knows. And pretty soon, after a while, you stop knowing who you really are. Okay? Without self protection, it involves embracing a sense of emotional honesty, being honest and transparency, being transparent, opening yourself up, which can lead to deeper self awareness, connection with others, and personal growth. Myself and Philip Brandon Gilmore spent hours on the phone at times. We spoke to each other maybe 4 times a year, but when we spoke, we spoke. And you would think, now we know that he's vulnerable. He was vulnerable, with Jason, which is Freeze. But he was also vulnerable with me. And to make sure that he knew that he could be comfortable with me, I was vulnerable with him. So he told me things about him and how he felt and some of the things he had been through and some of his thoughts. And I did the same thing. It wasn't that I'm the minister and the elder and I put myself over him, or he's what he was, a gentleman of leisure, and he knew so much about everything that he put himself over me. But there was no positions then when we became vulnerable. It was 2 people sharing. And so I knew him a lot better than a lot of people, and he knew me better than a lot of people. And so therefore, we began to build a love for each other that was free of trying to protect and hide and make ourselves look like we were something that we weren't. In our eyes, when I looked at him, I could see who he is, and he looked at me and he could see who I was. And so that made us able to connect. And my position was always to be there for him as a bridge to get back to where he really wanted to go. So in order for him to trust me, I had to become vulnerable. And so that's what that relationship, some of the intricacies of that relationship entails. So vulnerability is the state of willingness to expose one's true self, emotion, and thoughts, and often in situations that carry some level of risk. Some level of risk. I heard a young man say, you got to risk it to get the biscuit. I thought that's pretty, young guy. He was about 20 years old. I thought, that was kind of, I feel you on that. I feel you on that. You got to risk it to get the biscuit. Whatever the biscuit is, the biscuit got to be the prize. It's got to be the object that you're trying to obtain. It's the position that you're trying to obtain. It's the thing that you're trying to get. And so you got to risk it. In other words, you got to become vulnerable. You have to put yourself in a position that you may not be able to get through it without getting some scars. You may not. You're putting yourself in a position that somebody could hurt you. But because you're trying to reach a goal, you're trying to reach personal growth and development, you're trying to be someone better than you are at the time, you take the risk. You become vulnerable by putting yourself out there to gain whatever it is you're trying to gain. You become vulnerable. You put yourself in a position where You may even fail. And if you fail, you understand that that's not the end of the world, because you can get back up and try it again. But sometimes it's intimidating when you think about how you may fail. So, understanding that you may fail, you become vulnerable to failure. But in this world and in this life, you can't make it anywhere without failing. The thing that people are afraid of, the thing that people worry about, the thing that people fret is failure. And they don't understand that failure is inevitable. In other words, failure is going to happen. Failure is the reality of life. I remember Will Smith. I saw a video of Will Smith some years ago, and he was talking about how people go to the gym, those that lift weights and stuff, they go to the gym and they understand, those that understand what they're doing, they understand that they are going to work out until their muscles fail. But the beautiful part about that is you may lay off one day, but you're going to come back the day after that, in most cases, when you're serious. And you got to build that muscle that failed the other day. You got to build that muscle back up. And most of the time, if you're faithful and if you do it, you build that muscle up stronger and bigger than it was when it failed. That's how things grow. That's how things build up. That's how things develop. Personal growth and development, things that you try, you may fail, things that you do. I remember I was telling my family the other day how that I was so afraid to speak in public. Sometimes I could remember being in school and had to read a paper, do a presentation, and I'm standing there and the paper is doing like this. Scared. I spent most of my childhood afraid. But one day I decided to be vulnerable and stick my neck out there and do it. And then do it again and again and again and again. And now I have no fear of speaking in public. Now you're always a little nervous. But being afraid is not here anymore. Because I know how to walk through the nervousness. Why? Because I failed a few times. And then I built upon those failures. I looked at how I failed and looked at the lessons that was in there. And I took those lessons and brought them to bear on what I was doing next. And they helped me to grow as a speaker. And so what I'm saying, sometimes you got to be vulnerable. It's not a guarantee that everything you do, you're going to fail. But when you stick your neck out there, understanding that there is a possibility of failing, you are vulnerable to failing. You have to understand that that's how you make it. That's how you survive in life. That's how you move forward in life. You have to become vulnerable to failing. Now, in my closing, I want to share a few things with you. You have to be vulnerable to sharing personal struggles. One of the things that I told you about me and Mr. Philip Brandon Gilmore, was we talked about the struggles and the difficulties we had in life. That helps, because as he told me things, I told him things. And so it lets us know that you will struggle in life no matter who you are. He and I are different ages, doing different things, but you struggle. And a lot of times when you share different things with other people, you have a sense of, I'm not the only one. Because I can remember when I was growing up, not talking to anybody about some of the things that I was doing privately. I thought I was the biggest creep in the world. Nobody could be a creep like me. And to come to find out, there was people more creepier than me. And that's not something to brag about, but it's something to understand that you're not the only one. So sharing my struggles, even as a counselor and a mental health professional, me sharing sometimes my struggles and what I went through, that helps others. But it also gets that stuff out of me, because every now and then thoughts would come and voices would speak to me and tell me that I'm still the same guy that I was all those years ago, and I'm going to fail big time, and everybody's going to know that you ain't what you say you are. But I am what I say I am. And I am what God said I am. But those voices try to trick you and tell you that you're not. So you have to tell somebody about that. You don't necessarily have to say, man, these voices are saying things, but you go and you talk about how you're feeling and the thoughts that are crossing your mind. You don't understand, some of you, that is a blessing to be able to do, to clear your mind. Talk about some of your struggles. Let people know that you're not Superman. I'm not a super saint. I'm not a super preacher. I'm not a super elder. Things happen. I make mistakes. People get upset with me. Sometimes I blow things. And so I'm being vulnerable even as I talk right now, because somebody could say, well, man, I thought you was this, that, and the other. And Philip said this. And listen, I don't know what you heard. I don't know what the word was. But listen, I'm a rough guy. I can make some big mistakes, and I can do some things and say some things that's not appropriate for even what I profess. And so I work on them things every day. And the more I become vulnerable and share those things, the more I can look back and say, you know what? I talked about this and I shared this with people. I'm not gonna keep coming back with the same stuff to share in that area. I'm gonna try to be better. Especially since now I've exposed myself and people know about it. I'm not going to allow them to use that against me, because I'm working on that now. But if you hide it, you you think you're hiding it. If you hide it, suppress it, ignore it, it festers on the inside. It festers. Get it up out you. Talk about some things. I didn't say talk with everybody. I didn't say stand on the corner with a bullhorn and shout it out, but find a friend, a minister, somebody, your mother, your father, somebody that you can talk to and get those things out of you. You got to express your feelings of love. I had a friend, he said, man, he asked the question, why is it so hard for me to say I love you? The only thing I can think of is because you're vulnerable. You feel like you're going to be vulnerable when you do that. You feel like you're going to be open for hurt. You feel like you're going to be open for somebody to use and abuse you. He's like, wow, man, that's deep. How did you know that? I said, because I'm the same way. And it's a stigma, and it's a brainwashing. It's a programming that comes from being abused or misused when you were young. Your childhood, molestation, and different things like that. You don't want to put yourself in a position to be used and abused. You don't want to put yourself in a position for somebody to take advantage. You don't want to be vulnerable, so you don't say, I love you. And a lot of times, I don't know how many women are going to see this, but a lot of times it's not bad English that a person has when they say, I love you. Oh, no, baby, I love you. Baby, you know I love you. I love you. It's because they can't say, I love you. I love you don't sound like I love you. I love you is easy. Oh, girl, you know I love you. But it's harder to say, you know what, I love you. That's a, that's uncomfortable to some people. They feel vulnerable. They feel like, man, I just put my head on the chopping block. I'm getting ready to get used and abused. You got to be open enough and vulnerable enough to admit your mistakes. I learned something. I had a job years ago where I was a courier. I was a person that took money around in the loop area of Chicago, the downtown area. And sometimes I had cash money and sometimes I had envelopes with checks in them. And I had to go to different offices, and 2 or 3 times I picked up the check or I didn't pick up the check. I think once or twice I lost the check. What I learned to do, and it was hard to do it. But when I looked in that bag, if that check wasn't there, I got on the phone and called my boss. I hesitated a minute and tried to look for it and dumped the bag out 2 or 3 times, but I blew it. I lost the check. I didn't hide it though. I was vulnerable. First, I was vulnerable because the check was gone. So somebody could cash it or do whatever they want to do with it and to get the money. But then I was vulnerable in a sense that my boss could say you're an imbecile and we need to fire you. But yet still, because of who I am and what I've tried to be all my life, as soon as I discovered that the check was gone, I got on the phone and told them. And do you not know that I was highly respected on that job? Like I said the other day, I've never been the best of anything. I never was the smartest on these jobs and everything, but it was something about me that people liked and they wanted me to be around. And I stayed on this particular job for 23 years. Okay? Why? Because of my character, the way I understood people, the wisdom that God had given me through his word and just in the natural. So being able to admit a mistake. Hey, listen, I just lost this check. They would never snap. They would just say, hey, just come on in and we'll figure out what to do from there. And we usually call somebody, or they would call somebody, get the check bounced. I mean, not bounced, but shut down, whatever. So you also got to be vulnerable enough. Put yourself take the risk to ask for help. What's the risk when you ask for help? The risk is you think, and a lot of times it's a figment of your imagination, you think that if you ask a question, you're going to look dumb and stupid. You think if you ask a question, you're going to be looked at as somebody as incompetent. You think that if you ask a question, you're going to look like somebody with no knowledge. You think these things. People you ask questions to, they don't think you that way. People that you ask questions, they feel like this person is trying to get information, so let me give him this information. Let me share this with him because he's asking. That doesn't make a person dumb. That doesn't make a person stupid. That makes a person smart. But many times we feel vulnerable. Because we're out there now. People are going to know that we don't know. But there's nothing wrong with not knowing. But it is something wrong with not trying to find out. That's when something's wrong. Not knowing, you can't know everything. But to sit up knowing that you need to know and don't try to find out, now that's you out there when that happens, when you're like that. And then you have to be vulnerable in trying something new, attempting a new skill or a hobby, knowing you might not excel at it initially and risking feeling of failure or embarrassment. You risk feeling failure or embarrassment. You risk that when you try something new. But we need to get over that. I still need to get over that. We still need to get over that. So if the 4 V's you need to succeed is vision, value, validation, and this last one here, vulnerability. If you add these into your life and ponder these things and practice these things, you will succeed in life, especially those who are living for God. You can't help but succeed because all of these are in the scripture. I could have gave you a scripture for each one, but I didn't want to go into a deep study. I just wanted to share out of my mind the things that I was thinking. So with that being said, I'm not going to hold you. This was longer than I thought it was going to be. I hope you enjoyed the 4. If you didn't see the 4, go back and see them. Go back and look for vision. Go back and look for value. Go back and look for validation. And I hope that you are blessed by what has been stressed in these videos. All right. That's Elder Patillo signing out. These messages was designed with you in mind to help you succeed and to help you go higher in your life. I'm out.